Sorry. Okay, cool. Can I introduce and can you please give a warm welcome to Daniel O'Neill?
Can you come in a bit? It's a bit of a strange setup with all this sort of triangle moving away from you. Okay, so thanks for having me tonight. Nicola asked me to come in and talk about some of the sort of things that I've been getting up to in the last couple of years. I describe myself as a bit of a young upstart generally because I've done quite a lot of different jobs over the last few years. I'll start by telling you where I've come from because I hope you'll get a good picture of where I am now through that. When I got to the point of choosing my GCSEs, I wanted to be a doctor, so I picked all these scientific things. That carried through GCSEs, and at the end of them I still wanted to be a doctor, so I picked all the right sciencey A levels and did all the right sort of things to tick the boxes for UCAS and my personal statement and get all of the right things, so that I had lots of experience outside of school to show that I was really committed to the idea of doing medicine, and then had a massive change of heart. I didn't want to do that anymore at all. Most of it was because I didn't get on with some of my teachers, and it just suddenly stopped being what I wanted to do with my life. So I ended up with a collection of sort of middling A-level results that weren't really any use for anything, and went down to the job office, and they said, well, you don't really have any qualifications to do anything that you might want to do, so how about any of these very attractive opportunities? So I sort of thought, I don't really want to do any of those. And started asking around friends and family to see if they had anything. And one of them was the managing director for a large tractor parts distribution company, which sounds like a pretty dull proposition as an industry, and it is. But he was looking for a photographer to take pictures for his catalogues. And I thought, well, that sounds a bit better than anything I've heard of so far. I'll tell him that I know how to do photography and I can take pictures of things and use Photoshop and everything. And he said, oh, that sounds really good. Come in for an interview next week. So I went home and furiously learned how to be a photographer and use Photoshop and things like that. And ended up with this studio that I was in charge of and a couple of people that I was allowed to order around and things, which was a bit intimidating, but a lot of fun learning how to actually do it all. And through that, I found that I actually really liked using a camera and stuff like that. And thought, well, actually, when my contract ends here, I'll go to university to do photography. And I sort of finally had a vocation again, something that I sort of thought, yeah, this is what I want to do with my life. But again, I came back to the problem of not really having the right qualifications for anything. So I had to do some fairly creative personal statement writing for UCAS, and I picked a university that looked like its standards were a little bit low, and ended up at Portsmouth. And the course itself, I didn't get very much out of. Portsmouth, as a town, I really, really enjoyed being in. And part of one of the effects of not particularly being challenged by the course was that I found myself looking for other things to do. And one of those things was looking for other bits of photography work. And something I found myself doing was helping a guy called Steve Bumford with some sort of techie computer stuff while he was photographing a huge rugby tournament. He put a notice up on our sort of school notice board saying, I'm looking for guys to do this, does anyone want to do it? And I replied and said yes. And he took me to the job, and that started us doing bits of photography together. And at the time, he met a guy who was a graphic designer, and they sort of said to each other, well, let's do a magazine for fun, just as an experiment. Let's see if we can do a magazine. I'm a photographer, you're a graphic designer, we've got all the skills we need. And I got involved with that as a sort of writer, mostly, not a photographer. And this magazine project sort of took off, and lots of people in town thought, hey, that sounds really good, because there wasn't really much on offer for the sort of creative network in Portsmouth to pitch into as a collective project. And the idea started to sort of snowball a little bit. And it got to the point where we'd redesigned everything about 2 or 3 times, and it had gotten to such a size that it probably wasn't going to be something we'd be able to do ourselves and print ourselves on a photocopier. We'd need some fairly serious finance behind it to make it work. So somebody said, well, hey, you're giving opportunities to young creative people. Why don't you apply to something like Unlimited for money? Has anybody has applied to Unlimited before? Luke, I know you have, 'cause that's how we met. Anyone else have done that or considering it for their projects? No? Okay. You can be involved in this if you like. Throw questions at me if you've got any at any point. So we applied for some money for Unlimited with this sort of box ticking of, we're offering opportunities for local creative people, we're creating a network for Portsmouth's fairly sporadic and fractured social creative scene. And we got some money to create 10,000 copies of a black and white magazine called Noir et Blanc magazine, which we did, and 10,000 copies is quite a big pile to get rid of. It's, I think, 3 3/4 of a pallet full, and each box weighs 14.2 kilograms. I know that because I carried most of them around myself. And we eventually got rid of almost all of them after pretty much blanketing Portsmouth with them, and then we went to Chichester, Brighton, Southampton, Worthing, and somewhere else whose name escapes me. Where else did we go? I think we went to Winchester briefly. And everyone sort of thought, okay, well, this magazine's a bit weird, we haven't seen anything like this before, but it's cool, we think this is a good thing that's happened. So we thought, hey, we better do another one. But at that point, the money from Unlimited had run out, because it turned out not to be unlimited. And we thought, well, all right, we'll just get advertisers. That's how people pay for magazines normally, isn't it? And we phoned up loads and loads of companies and said, do you want to advertise in this weird magazine that we've only done one copy of? And surprisingly, everyone said no, apart from a few people who then saw the magazine and then said no afterwards. So we were back at square one. We still wanted to do this, to do another copy of our magazine, so we could continue our work with sort of creating opportunities for young and up-and-coming creatives in our area, but we didn't have any money. So we thought, all right, well, we'll pay for it by selling it this time, because previously it had been a free magazine. And we looked up all the costs of getting it distributed to newsagents, and that turned out to be about 19 times more expensive than actually printing it in the first place. So we could have both had reasonably nice salaries if we just sort of managed to get that money ourselves and then spent it on the distribution. We could have just not bothered with the whole thing, so we thought, okay, right, sod that for a game of soldiers, we're not going to be paying anyone to distribute it for us, it's far too expensive. So again, we found ourselves back at square one. We had this thing we wanted to do, didn't have the money, couldn't find any way of getting the money for it. So we thought, well, this Facebook stuff and Twitter and things, they're really taking off at the moment. What about if we didn't distribute it to newsagents and people just bought it online and then it was sent to them? And we used things like Facebook and Twitter that are free to use to market it. And that seemed like a pretty good proposition. And we could have done an e-version as well, that we didn't even have to pay to print. So we started learning all about how to market things using the internet for free. And this process took a couple of months, maybe 3 or 4 months, to sort of get to the point where we thought, oh yeah, we kind of know what we're doing now. And by that point, we found ourselves being asked quite a lot how to do things using Facebook and Twitter for marketing purposes. And it got to the point where we thought, well, actually, we might be able to get people to pay us to teach them how to do these things. So maybe we could do that as a job and then print this magazine with the money that we've earned through this. So we thought, okay, well, let's put up a notice somewhere and book a room and say, right, well, you can come and learn how to do all this stuff for £35 for the afternoon. And we sold out a couple of seminars and made a bit of cash and thought, hey, that's pretty good, we should keep doing this. And then a couple of people that came on seminars said, well, actually, I think my needs for my social marketing are a bit more complicated than what you've gone through. It was really good and we know how to sort of approach it now, but we'd like a bit more help one-on-one, so could you come and do a bit of consultancy work with us? Okay, wouldn't really describe ourselves as consultants, but if you like, we'll do that for money. And that just sort of carried on progressing towards being a consultancy in social marketing, that we just thought, well, actually, where does the magazine fit into all this? Doesn't really. So let's put that on mothballs for now, and just concentrate on being a social media marketing consultancy, which is where we are at now. We sort of stopped doing the public seminars so much, and now we're doing quite a lot of talks similar to this, but mostly about social marketing around the south. And most of them find us somebody else who says, could you come in and help my business become a social business, or make social marketing part of our marketing strategy? And it's working pretty well. We had a period before we got to that point where we were just sort of running around a bit and finding lots of different things to do. Still on a bent of helping young creative people find opportunities, and we applied for a couple of bits of funding to run projects. One of those was a photography course for the young and unemployed, using disposable cameras to produce professional exhibitions. That worked really well, it was a lot of fun. And the other one was an exercise in getting older and younger people to show each other the photographs of their lives. Again, that was really fun, worked really well, and it sort of kept us going for a while we went through this process of deciding, well, actually, we should probably be doing this because this is what we're spending most of the time doing, and this is bringing in a little bit of money for us. And that's kind of where we are at today. Has anybody got any questions so far?
With how many people are you working with?
It's just me and my partner Steve Bamford at the moment. We've got a sort of collection of partner organisations that oh, brilliant, some water. Two. Anywhere else here that I was really starting to need that. Yeah, the core business is me and my partner Steve Bamford. It works very well. We've both got very different approaches to working, and we've both got sort of different areas of expertise. Facebook is my sort of comfortable. I'm pretty confident that I can solve most Facebook marketing issues that he might run up with, and he's much more confident with Twitter. We've got a couple of organisations that we work with that we sort of say. A lot of time with our clients, when we're doing sort of more involved consultancy work, they end up saying, well, could you have a look at our website as well while we're doing all this other net stuff with our marketing? And a lot of the time we come away saying, well, it's not really suited to the social internet. If you're starting to think this is something you really need to make a part of what you're doing, the website kind of needs to come with it. It can't stay as it is at the moment. But neither of us are web designers, so we've got a couple of web designers that we work with, and we just sort of hive off work to, and we take a little bit of a cut for as a sort of project management fee. Again, we've got some graphic designers that we work with, because again, sometimes people who are wanting to make social marketing a big part of their marketing strategy think, well, actually it needs to be part of our print marketing as well. Do you know any graphic designers that can help us with that, or do you do it yourselves? And again, neither of us are, but we've got friends and associates that do know how to do that, so we can arrange a fee that's nice for everyone, and then sit on top of the whole thing as project management. We've got a couple of social enterprises and things that we work with as well, just as something to do that's giving something back, if you like, as our sort of CSR. We do a lot of work with the Hampshire School for Social Entrepreneurs, who are one of our biggest clients, and we help all of their students with their own social marketing as part of our sort of work with them. So does that answer that question?
Yes.
Anybody else? Someone at the back there.
Yeah, while you served in the beginning stage of this, when you offered your services or defined your services, how did you sort of define the pricing or negotiate that?
With a lot of people doing providing products that are sort of knowledge-based and aren't really a thing that they can say, right, this is how much it costs me to produce it, and this is how much I need to make on top of that to make it worth my while making it in the first place. There was quite a lot of doing this and just sort of saying, well, yeah, all right, it's worth this much. Does that sound all right to you? Phew, it does. Okay. So to start with, it was kind of guesswork really, with the sort of, okay, well that's a day's work, we need to earn about this much money for a day's work so that we can pay our rent and things. But to be honest, it was lacking really. It was a sort of, okay, we think they can pay this much, let's try that and see how it goes. So it's not a very comprehensive answer, but that's how we did it to start with. And now we've got a base rate of $350 a day for our services that is working pretty well for us. Nobody really bats an eyelid at that at the level that we're working, because we usually tend to work with small to medium companies that have got sort of maybe between 10 and 20 employees, so they aren't particularly perturbed by values at that level. But if we were working with purely social entrepreneurs or tiny one-man bands, then I expect we'd be charging much, much less as our day rate. Or if we were working with large companies based in London, we'd be probably charging 2 or 3 times that for a day rate. Does that help? There's another one there.
It seems that with this kind of social marketing, it comes down to having a following, a tribe that support your ideas and follow you as a brand and tweet and retweet everything that you say. But I assume that your clients are all very different. You've got schools, you've got businesses, you've got different kind of enterprises going on. So when you approach these different clients, how do you go about finding a big audience for that specific brand?
I'm not sure I understood the question. Is it if so we've got client A who needs to talk to audience A,
Yeah.
how do we help them do that?
Yeah, which is different to your previous client.
Yeah. There's quite a lot of sitting down and finding out who their clients are. It boils down to who do you want to talk to and what do you want to do is the question, is the basic question that we sit down and ask. Oh, dropping money. And usually then it's a case of finding out where that community is online, if they are online. Not every business is going to be suited to social marketing, and not every business that is going to be suited to every single area of it. For example, Facebook doesn't really work for business-to-business companies at all, because Facebook's all about sort of geographic communities of people who know each other and want to talk about which films they've just seen and where they're going to go and drink next or whatever. Whereas Twitter is much more focused on sort of small communities all talking about very specific subject areas. So you can market a business-to-business service much more easily on there by finding those communities. Does that answer that at all?
Sure, but I'm sure you and your consultancy, you do more than just finding similar businesses and following them and hoping that they follow you.
Yeah. It's all about just starting conversations and helping the companies appear to be influencers on the subject area, so that within those communities, if anyone arrives there, they'll stumble upon our clients sooner rather than later and see that they're holding their own and they've got a fairly dependable voice. Anything else?
To what extent is your approach affected by the overall integrated marketing strategy of businesses that come for you?
Goodness me. That was an involved question. It depends on the business or the client's approach to social marketing. Sometimes, if they're coming to us with we'd like to have a go at this, we'd like to dip our toe into social marketing, it's quite simple just to let them start exploring it without really being too concerned about how it fits into the entirety of their marketing platform, because they're not looking to integrate it straight away. They're just looking to dabble with it to find out if it's going to be appropriate. Whereas if they've already got to the point where they know they need to be doing it across the board, then we have to sit down with them and look at the entire spectrum of their marketing and decide where it needs to fit in, and do quite a lot of sort of research and brainstorming and strategizing and sometimes even policy writing with them to decide how that's going to work. But yeah, it really depends on where the organisation is and where they want to go with it.
So your experience so far can actually help you with being able to say, okay, I don't think your product is marketable on Facebook.
Yeah. We're pretty. Initially, we were quite sort of prone to saying, yeah, anyone can market anything on this social network.
but now we're quite happy to say, actually, no, this is just not going to work, or this is not going to work on Facebook. Don't look at it. Again, we're not infallible in that. Some things have been able to work surprisingly well on things that we'd probably say, no, that doesn't work very well. Like one of the largest gambling websites has a Twitter account that only tweets jokes, and that's all they do. So they're just funny to follow. They don't ever say anything about gambling. It doesn't really say much about it in their little tiny profile. So they get followers based on being a sort of fun guy to be around. Whereas generally on Twitter, if anything is talking about gambling, it's probably some sort of spam bot that you don't want to be anywhere near, because it's just going to be trying to get you to do stuff. So that's a sort of surprising way that we wouldn't have thought of initially. So it's a never say never, but it's getting easy for us to say that's probably not going to work.
And how did you arrive at that model? For every business, of course, is different, but how do you make your way around making it viral still?
I think it's just been experience, really, and seeing what lots and lots of different companies are doing. We're both pretty active users on a personal level, so we're sort of constantly looking to see what any kind of business is doing, if it's doing something really interesting, so that we can sort of pinch ideas, really. Yeah.
How long have you guys been going?
That's a good question. In terms of being a partnership and working together, we've been working together for nearly 5 years now, since I started university. We met up in the autumn of my first term. In terms of working together to produce a magazine or do creative things together, that's been about 3.5 years. Then birth of Neb Media as a company, we're about to hit our 2nd birthday now. And in terms of being a social media consultancy, we're about to hit our 1st birthday. We had a first year where we were just doing creative projects in a fairly vague envelope of we'll do anything for money if it involves us doing something fun and cool and probably with the camera. And then we just got to that point where we decided actually people were really interested in Facebook and Twitter and things like that, so we can use that to market ourselves, and we can get people to pay for our expertise in that.
How do you assess if something is like viable for social media? Like you said, some things are not, good for social media. How do you assess the product? Is it a certain industry that just can't do it, or?
Is it something to do with brand equity?
Yeah, brand equity is a big part of it. I'll address that, and then I'll address that. In broad terms, it depends what the service is or product is, and without going into a completely different discussion, which is quite an interesting one, is if it's about what you do in your free time, it's probably going to work pretty well on Facebook. If it's about something that people really care about, so a cause or a concern or a charity or something, it's likely to work very well on both. If it's a fairly professional service, it's unlikely to work on Facebook, but it's very likely to work well on Twitter and LinkedIn. If it's something like an accountancy or something where it's fairly cut and dried as to what it is and what it's for, it has a chance of working on all of them, but traditional marketing is probably still going to be the main channel for that type of service to work well. So it's basically we're just used to knowing what will work and what won't work. But those are the sort of broad brushstrokes of yes or no. So what was your question, sorry?
I think it was related to what extent will the brand equity matter in actually whether it will be marketable on Facebook.
Yeah.
Certain items, generic items like commodities, I don't think they would be.
Brand equity is something that some companies want to push using social networks without necessarily worrying too much about how that affects their sales. They just want to be seen to be being an authority or an influencer on the subjects that it is that they provide services for. So that's if a company is really after that type of use of social marketing, we provide help for them to know what it is to talk about and what sort of voice to use so that they appear to be these influencers and authority figures on that subject. Anything else from anyone? From there?
Could you maybe describe in more details the recent cases you have solved? Like, for example, what was the company, what was its problem, and what solution did you suggest?
I didn't hear the last half of that, sorry.
Sorry?
I didn't hear the last half of that. Can you speak up?
What solution did you suggest for the problem?
Okay, so I've been doing some work with a social enterprise called MobileWise, who are a charity that are working to push the idea that mobile phones aren't particularly as safe as the mobile phone companies would have everyone believe, because they do emit radiation and we do have them clamped to our heads quite a lot, and there is a building body of research that says actually they're not 100% healthy. And they just want people to be more aware of this. They're not trying to get mobile phones banned or anything, they just want people to be aware of the safety risks, just like you have labels on alcoholic drinks saying, you know, don't overdo it. They want the same sort of thing for mobile phones, especially for children. So one of the things that we've helped them do is we made one of their they had this idea for a print advert for a magazine they couldn't afford to do, which effectively it was a few snippets from user guides to mobile phones in the sort of terms and conditions bits at the end, where it says things like, don't ever have the mobile phone within an inch of your body because it emits radiation. But this is all printed really, really tiny. So they had this sort of series of print adverts that said, this is what mobile phone companies don't want you to know, because they print it really small, so we're going to print it really big. Here's what it actually says in your BlackBerry manual or your iPhone manual. So we helped them convert that into a website that was just a click-through. So the first page was the first part of this advert, click-through, second page, they ended up at their website. And that gave them a product that they could post onto social networks as here's a link, this is what your mobile phone companies don't want you to know about, which provided people with something that they thought, yeah, I want to know what my mobile phone companies don't want me to know, which helped them gain a lot of traffic to their website that has their sort of big report and all their sort of helpful tips, and please sign our petition, so the government makes it a bit more difficult for mobile phone companies to put this in such tiny print at the back of the manual. So that's something that we've done using social networks for a company that we work for. I think there was a hand went up in the middle somewhere.
So what's like the top 3 things that you have to keep telling people?
Top few.
Yeah.
It's
like
social.
Things that people do
it's
wrong.
social
It's
marketing.
Yeah.
So don't treat it like your traditional text writing literature. It's got to be a person doing this and talking to it. It's all about creating a community and a relationship with customers, clients, or interest groups, rather than just giving them information that they then go off and digest and read and do something on. You've got to have a conversation with them. So it's not just a case of having a Facebook page and then just leaving it at that. It's got to be, we have a Facebook page that we continually update with things that are going to bring our community closer to us. It's safe is something that we often tell people, particularly when we're working in third or public sectors. You get a lot of resistance from groups like boards of trustees that sort of, they get caught up on the potential perceived risks of using social networks, because you don't have absolute control over what people are doing. It's not like printing a leaflet that you sort of, right, this is what's on it, there it is, it's done. You sort of do that, but then people can write on and put pictures on and edit themselves, because you're being part of a two-way community. And some of our work is about bringing boards of trustees around to it. So it's a lot of the sort of safety fears are either exaggerated or completely mythical, and there are a lot of ways to try it with zero or minimal risk. Another top thing. we often tell people.
Something you see people doing really wrong. What's that?
Mixing platforms. Twitter and Facebook don't mix. We see people trying to save themselves time by hooking the two up so that their tweets come out of their Facebook page and their Facebook updates come out of their Twitter account. It just doesn't work very well often. Especially going from Twitter to Facebook. Who uses Twitter in the room? It's worth having a go with if anyone doesn't use it. But if you use it, you'll know that Twitter involves quite a lot of jargon and code, which is confusing to the Facebook user who's not used to that, and will just alienate that population. So if you're trying to save yourself time by mixing the two together, you might spend less time doing it, but you'll get much less results out of it because it's less. It's got less integrity to it because people see that you're just sort of cutting corners. And also, if you're doing it through one to automatically update the other, you won't be looking at the other. So if you get any of the sort of social stuff that you're doing it for, you won't necessarily see it. So that's something that we see people doing. That's a bit of a bad one. At the moment, we're doing some work with schools and educators about young people, particularly young people, and employment, and how recruiters are starting to use the social networks to vet candidates. It's just been a big study published about who's doing it and how, and it's about 90% of recruitment people are looking up people that they've got an application for in their hands and seeing what they're up to on Facebook. And almost all, particularly Facebook, it's almost all of them are using Facebook, most of them are using Twitter, and about a bit less than half are looking at LinkedIn. And most of them have said that actually, yes, once we do look up a candidate, we more often than not say either yes, we want this person for an interview because they look really good, they look like they're an interesting, well-rounded person, that they've got good literacy, and they look like their personal values will suit our corporate values, or the opposite, this person looks like they can't spell, they're dull, they're not well-rounded, they spend all their time going out drinking, they've said bad things about their current or previous employers, and that gets their applications put straight into the bin. So we're doing some work at the moment, producing a package to deliver to schools to help them teach their young people what not to do and what to do using the social networks, because it's pretty surprising what people will actually say on these public forums that are very, very observable by strangers, especially if they're looking for jobs. I've been looking at my own feeds recently to see what my friends on Facebook particularly are saying, to see how often it comes up where I think actually if this person was trying to get me to pay them to do a job, I don't know if I would, based on what you've just said. And the best one so far has been something along the lines of, oh my god, I hate doing CVs, it's so boring, I'm going to go and drink heavily now. So if I had their CV on my desk and thought, okay, I'll look at this person, and they see, so applying to work here is boring and makes you want to drink, does it? All right then, we'll call you. So that's been an interesting area to look into, and it's we're not aware of many people doing similar research and offering a similar package to us, so that's an exciting thing for us for the next couple of months. Yeah. Anyone else?
Well, I thought just for fun, perhaps I could test you, like, so let's say I was starting in business selling like personalised cakes, birthday cakes. So what would you advise me to do in my social media? Just trying to get an idea of what you actually tell people.
Okay.
I'm sort of a bit confused what you do.
I'd say Facebook was the one to concentrate on that. I think Twitter would work as well. Is your service something that you're selling to a localised population?
Local community.
Yeah. So have you got a premise, or are you doing it from your bedroom or an office?
Just from my kitchen. I get my mum to cook and make
Something like that it's visual, and it's about something that people are doing in their free time. So I'd say Facebook, something with lots and lots of pictures, lots of free giveaways because the cost of a small cake to produce is fairly minimal, so you can probably afford to dish stuff out a bit to entice people. One of my friends who's graphic designer, one of his clients is a company called Miss Cupcake, and she's very successful on Facebook. Not one of ours, unfortunately, but she does a similar sort of thing. She makes vegan cupcakes that are really, really good. Yeah, you made me face. Yeah, she won't tell anyone how they're made, but they're very, very good. And she's done incredibly well with Facebook marketing. So I'd say, have a look at her. Do you think this is going to work for yours? And then we take it from there. Really, it depends what they want from us. If they want something, if they want us to do everything, or if they want us just to sort of teach them how to do it.
Yeah.
You know, on Twitter, if you're trying to basically put your brand onto Twitter, obviously Twitter's kind of like one of the most popular things to use or whatever. How would you search for like connect on Twitter? You know what I mean? Because obviously, normal people like us use Twitter, and obviously there's like loads of organisations that use it as well. So how would you search to have the organisations on it? Obviously, if you have them on it, you're able to kind of like talk to them and get them to maybe like read out for funding, advertisement, or get to like contact these people so you get to see them. So how would you go about having these people? And how do you even know them?
Do you use Twitter?
Yeah, I do.
So you've got a search function within Twitter, which is usually pretty foolproof way of finding people. Most of it is it's just if there's a company that you'd like to talk to, search for them.
Or would you maybe like search would you search the kind of category or just in?
It depends. If there's a specific entity that you're looking to talk to, then you'd search for their name or their names to find out if they've got a presence. Whereas if you're looking for a variety of companies and individuals that are interested in this thing that you're interested in, then you'd search bold category terms. So you could use hashtags. Do you use hashtags? Okay. Well, those are sort of Twitter indexes or buzzwords where people use the hash symbol in front of a word or a phrase or an acronym to say, I'm deliberately talking about this subject. So if you search using those, so say I wanted to look up, if I wanted to find social enterprises on Twitter, I might search hash social enterprise, all one word. And the people using that indexer would be deliberately talking about the topic of social enterprise. So there'd be people that I'd want to communicate with for whatever reason was that I'm interested in social enterprise. Or if you're interested in just finding out who's on Twitter in your local area, you'd search for the hashtag town name. So if I wanted to find out if there was anyone in Egham using Twitter, I would do hashtag Egham. Same for Portsmouth. That works quite well, although in Portsmouth the Twitter community is quite local to one region. So if you're in an area where it's quite sort of fragmented into different parts, search for those little areas as well. Portsmouth's Twitterati are mostly based in an area called Southsea, so hashtag Southsea is a much more active one than hashtag Portsmouth.
So how do you know something like you tweet stuff, and then people tweet you back straight away? How are you able to do that, for example? So let's say for example, like this cake example. So if I'm going to tweet I want some cake, how can I come like sometimes there's like companies that can tweet you back like, oh, your cake, go here. Yeah. How would you create that? That's a really good like way in it.
Yeah. There's quite a few apps for doing auto responses to things.
Oh, it's auto. Oh.
Yeah.
So they will just tweet. So anytime cake appears up, they.
Yeah, kind of. For larger companies, it's probably because they've got quite a big team of people looking after their Twitter accounts, so they've got enough manpower to be able to respond to everyone all the time really quickly.
How would you do it if you was like starting up yourself? Obviously not with cake, but what you want to go into?
I'd say it's best not to worry about too much automation if you're a one-man band of some description, because the volume of traffic, unless you've got something that's suddenly amazing and you're predicting it's going to be national or bigger very quickly, you're probably not going to need something that can deal with lots and lots of responses to you very quickly. So I think just monitor it on a sort of daily-ish basis to make sure to make sure that you can respond to anything that anybody says. But the volume of traffic you're going to have initially is probably not going to be too great for you to be able to deal with manually. And you'll be able to learn more about how your customer base is using Twitter by looking at it actively rather than letting a bit of software take over it for you.
Lastly as well, if you are set up a business you do put on Twitter, what kind of stuff would you recommend that you tweet to get like views, like those people following you and stuff? Should you tweet stuff like, I don't know, giveaways?
Yeah, anything you're doing as a promotional activity, tweet about that. Any interesting developments that are happening, tweet about that. If your business is something that the running of it is quite interesting in itself, talk about what's going on in the office. If things that people can relate to are happening, talk to because people like to see that humans are behind these accounts and that actually the company is being run by people who have experiences, not just these sort of cold professionals who are doing the job, just like robots. Tweet relevant news stories. If you pick a couple of subject areas that are sort of close to what it is that you're offering as a business, and just cascade on your opinions about things that are happening in your industry, partly to help you be found by people looking at those subject areas, but partly to show that you are interested in what it is that you're doing and you're knowledgeable and authoritative on that subject area.
Having said what you just said, isn't that actually a problem to have your message board hijacked by a certain topic that you have started yourself?
It depends. What do you mean? Give me an example of this.
Well, your business has been rated by the recent riots. You tweet that, you Facebook that on your message board, and people suddenly start reacting. They actually talk about this rather than your business.
It depends. For the riots is a good example because that went on over a period of a week or two while people were excited about that on Twitter. If that was all you were talking about, then yes,
Takes the attention away, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And you might end up with lots of new people connecting with you because you're talking about this subject that is very relevant now, but actually doesn't have anything to do with what you do normally. So they might well be dead weight, if you like, after the issue at hand has lost its sort of charm in terms of newsworthiness. So it's very good to dip into conversations about things that are happening and are very topical, just to sort of show you're interested in it, you're taking you've got an opinion and you've got an authoritative voice and you can say things that other people will find engaging, but remember that you're there to market something. On your personal thing, if you're just running something on a personal basis, talk about whatever it is that you want, because people are connecting with you, the person, and people do have lots of different interests that change all the time. But a company needs to have a fairly, not rigid, but firm grasp of what it is that it talks about on a daily basis. Which is not to say you can't do something which is called syndicating, which is when there is a topic that's suddenly a really big buzzworthy thing. You do talk about that a lot because the people that you engage based on that conversation will be interested in what it is that you do on a normal basis. So it can be useful to suddenly talk about a newsworthy thing all the time because it's got some relationship with what it is that you do the rest of the time.
So I'm just wondering about how often you should tweet, because I've heard that if you tweet all day, every day, people get pissed off because you tweet too much and just clogging up their inboxes or whatever it's called, feeds. If you don't tweet enough, then you fall out of the kind of...
It's a tricky one.
So if most people in here are a startup and are hoping to get the word out, potentially from student body into the other community about businesses, how much should they be tweeting? How many times a day? That's really specific.
On Twitter, but they're not inactive either. They're average Twitter users. Daily-ish. It's difficult. It depends. let's say between 3 and 10 times a
Can we
day.
get, I know there's loads of you in here who've got businesses who want to get up and running, so can we get an example, somebody who's brave enough to say, maybe? Yeah, okay, so she's got a fantastic idea about getting students to send in their photography, and she wants to sell it on and take a cut, obviously, because there's plenty of talented photographers around on campus. So she wants to get the message out to the EGDO population that she's here and she's here to sell your photography. So how many times should she be tweeting a day, or what should she be tweeting about, or just about photography, or?
So I set a Facebook page this week actually. It's got quite a few hits already, but it's just about keeping it updated, I suppose, what you're saying, how often?
Yeah, with Facebook, once or twice a day for an update is very healthy. Slightly less or slightly more is fine, but as long as it's current, whatever it is that anybody sees, as they do. Twitter, it really depends on how much activity it generates for you. If you were just experimenting with it, I'd say be reasonably active, because you need to have quite a current presence to engage people on for initially, because you don't have a great body of followers to show people that visit you that actually, okay, this person's got 600 followers, that means that they're pretty alright, like that's 600 people who've said, yes, I want to listen to this person. Whereas if you just started, you might have 5 or 6, so you need to be a bit more active to gain new ones. And you should be tweeting about things relevant to the artistic community. I assume you want to sell these things to people locally, or do you want to sell nationally or internationally?
Hopefully on a large scale in the future, but at the moment, universities over the country haven't starting with this university.
Okay, so I'd probably pick a couple of towns near to Egham to talk about as well. So if you just pick a geographic area that you talk about, so talk about events that are happening in those areas on a creative event, so exhibitions opening, or photography courses starting, or local photographers working in those areas. Photography is a really good topic on Twitter, actually. It's a very, very active community already using it. And then if you're talking about these things and trying to start conversations with people that are also on Twitter, talking about similar things, go from there really. If it's not returning anything and you're finding it a bit of a chore, try tailing it off if it's not doing anything for you. But if you're finding that actually you're getting a lot of traffic from your website to your website from it, people are seeking you out and talking to you, and it's returning a lot, then spend more time doing it. It's how much time should I spend doing it before I've had a go at it? I'd say some time, but not all of your time. But no, I can't be more specific than that, because it doesn't. I can't say whether or not it's going to work, because you're dealing with people rather than anything dependable.
Because I say, wouldn't it be based on kind of like, for example, if you're targeting like teenagers kind of thing, you would look at how many times teenagers tweet kind of thing, and then you would kind of cater to like that.
You could do, yeah.
Because you know teenagers are always on it all the time to us, so you kind of want to be like involved that journey. Whereas some people kind of like on it sometimes, and not really on it sometimes.
Yeah.
So
And
you have to kind of start cater to that.
Yeah. For that, you just have to find the community that you want to talk to, and just observe what it is that they're doing. If they are very active and they're talking in certain ways, try mimicking that and try integrating with it. If they're not very active and the things that they tend to engage with are news stories, cater to that. It's all about looking at looking at the group that you want to talk to and behaving like them, which hopefully you get so easily because you're interested in similar things as they are.
Also, if you're going to put a logo on it, would you make sure the logo is registered first, or your business is registered first, or can you just do it regardless?
That's a grey area. Yes, you can, is the quick answer. When you say registered, you mean like have your company number set up or anything like that?
Yeah.
I don't know enough about the legal ins and outs of that to give you a categoric answer, but I know quite a lot of people that have and haven't gone into trouble for it. So I don't know is my final answer, but it should be fine.
And yeah, make sure your logo, if you are sticking that as your avatar, is very recognisable on a postage stamp sized square, because if you've got something that's quite complicated, it might be better to develop something that's friendly for very small presentations of your logo, which is true for anybody developing a brand. You need to have an element of it that works at any size. So if you've got a logo that's incredibly complicated and typographic, you aren't going to be able to make that translate into things like Twitter profiles, because it just won't look like anything when it's very small. So that's something you need to be aware of when you are designing a brand.
I'm wondering, on the Facebook page, you kind of have a number which says when people like it, and then you like have a number which is when people are talking about it.
Yeah, talking about it is
how you get that up.
it's a bit of a weird metric. It's pretty much the number of people that are regularly commenting and liking your posts. So to get that up, be more engaging is the short answer. So ask people what they think about things, post things that you know people are going to say, yes, I like this, or have an opinion about. Try and be a bit, maybe slightly controversial if you want people to talk about you and talk to you. Facebook questions are quite a good way of engaging people with things if you want them to respond, because people like to be asked for their two penneth about something. So photography, you might ask your fan base what brand of camera they use, because that's usually a pretty active conversation in the photographic community. Or you might say, you might post a famous photograph and ask people what they think of it, or you might see in the news that a famous picture has sold for a stupid amount in an auction. So you might say, well, do you think it's worth this much? Or how much would you conceive paying for this thing? Trying to get people to say what they think about things is usually quite a good way of building conversation on a page. Does that help a little bit?
I was also wondering, there's a function you can kind of stop people posting their own comments on the wall, but they can still comment on the stuff that you post. So I don't know if that's a better option, kind of keep it more professional if it's just a company post.
It depends on what it is that you think people are going to post there. There are very few things that I would, or companies or organisations that I'd say probably, just stick it to nobody else can post. Like maybe a school, for example, I would say probably keep control over it, because it's like they're Walkers. Whereas for something, especially in the kind of visual arts arena, things that people might be likely to post are probably things like, here, look at my album of photos, or here's the thing, have you seen this? It's really interesting. So you can set it so that the visitors only see the posts that you've put straight away, but they can look for other people's posts if they want to. And I'd say that was the best sort of halfway house. But yeah, definitely make sure people can post to your wall, because if somebody bothers, that means that they're very interested in what it is that you're doing and want to talk to you about it. So it's much better to let them, so you can start that conversation, because they're a really warm lead in terms of selling whatever it is that you're trying to do. Whereas if they can't, they might have sort of made the effort to go to your page or whatever, found out that actually you're not interested in what they're saying because you've blocked that function, and think, oh well, that's the last I have got to do with them then. Same for Twitter. If somebody talks to you on Twitter and it's something relevant, always talk back, because they won't bother again if you don't, because they've taken the trouble to approach you and say, hello, this is a thing that I want to know from you, or I would like you to look at because I think it's going to be interesting to you. And then if you just blank them, that's probably you dead to them in terms of your relationship thereafter. So it's all conversations is really important, and the sort of manners that you'd normally adopt in a real situation are pretty translatable. If somebody talks to you, don't ignore them, and let people talk to you, because they might say something useful.
It's a really basic question, but in your experience, is there any difference in how successful social media works for products versus services? Like, if you were offering a service, would it work just as well as if you're offering online,
services are.
like basically like stylist or personal advice kind of services, I guess, like not just like clothing, etc., but like almost a broader, like you can understand me, like a broader spectrum of it. Would that work on social media necessarily?
Yeah, that can work really well. I know quite a few stylists and hairdressers and things that post pictures of people that just had their hair done by them or done their makeup by them, and that lets people show themselves off.
But I was wondering, like, what would you post? Because you can't really post products that then events.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you could recommend?
If we're sort of keeping on the stylist area, just sort of things, professional tips of things that people can do at home. That's a really good one, because it's people like to sort of know tricks that professionals use for things, and it shows that you are A, very knowledgeable, you'll B, confident enough that people are going to pay you to do things that you can give away some of your secrets. And see, it just adds value to your fans and followers, because they're gaining something for free they can then go off and do that they don't have to pay you for, and they think, yeah, I learned that from this company, and that I like that because of that, and I think they're good to work with.
And would Facebook and Twitter both equally work? Or would you recommend one over the other?
Initially, I'd say Facebook would be my leaning, but try both, something like that. Because you can use it both in different ways, and you might find that actually just talking about something like that, I assume is going to be fairly locally based.
Probably, yeah.
So on Twitter, you might just talk about things that are happening in the area to act as something so people know that you are a stylist in the area, but you're not talking about it all the time. So that if they get to a point where they think, actually, I need this service. Oh, there's that person that I talk to on Twitter sometimes. They do that. I'll go and look at their website. It's just you can do it in a sort of roundabout way without having to without necessarily trying to push it on the first one. So try both.
Just one last thing. So, you think there's any future for Google Plus, and would you advise anyone to use it?
I was waiting for that.
And what communities do you know that use it at the moment? For me, it's certain techie type of people like.
Yeah, Google Plus.
I quite like it, though. I'd love if people using it.
It's yeah.
I don't know if you can read about it and talk to these kind of people.
The general consensus at the moment is, it might take off, maybe. In the UK, it's not really a big deal. In the US, it's got lots and lots of users, but most of the people on it at the moment are the early adapters and early adopters who've sort of said, oh wow, a new social network, I am going there. And then everyone sort of ran over and thought, set up a Google Plus profile and everything else. Now what?
So for Twitter, the early adapters are all in one town or something over there, and that's why it spread.
Yeah, same for Facebook. It's very
university Facebook. Google Plus.
Google Plus.
You don't know if any.
No, not, it's sort of techie. Music has sort of worked on it quite well. It's not your everyday person, particularly. It's not your UK person, particularly. At the moment, the general consensus seems to be Google Plus. Keep an eye on it, but don't worry about it too much if it's not something you're interested in exploring. If you are the type of person that wants to try new technologies all the time, then definitely go and have a look. It's pretty cool. It's got some cool functions, but everyone is still holding their breath in terms of waiting to see if it sort of happens with a capital H. It is Google's third attempt at doing a social network, and they don't have a good track record so far, so we'll see about that. Although it has been in the news a bit more lately, because they've started doing things with Google Plus and search results, which is looking slightly questionable in terms of the health of the internet, which was a topic yesterday when Wikipedia was down because of SOPA. So yeah, that's Google Plus is, keep an eye on it, but don't worry about it if you're not the type of person that can be bothered with trying out new stuff while it's brand new.
One thing that I've noticed some small scale kind of projects doing is actually publishing like a BlackBerry Messenger code. Do you say that's kind of too unprofessional? Because obviously a lot of people use them.
Yeah, it's not something I have much experience in, I'm afraid. I wouldn't be able to give much of an answer to. But if it's something that you know that your audience is using a lot, and you don't, and because you understand
understand your audience, you don't think they're going to be turned off by the idea of it, have a go with it and see if it works. Would be my fairly tentative advice. If you've got a Facebook page, you might like to try Facebook adverts. Actually, they're very good and very easy to use. You can use them pretty.
Yeah, I've seen the function, but it looks very confusing.
Yeah, it looks confusing. Essentially, the way it works is the first step is creating the advert itself, which is this big, so it's not very complicated to actually make it. The second step is targeting, and you can do that with a really, really precise level of sort of narrowing down on what your audience is based on things that Facebook knows about its consumers. So, for example, you could say, I want people who are aged 17 to 28 in the Egham area, no more than 16 kilometres away, who are interested in photography and art. And then Facebook might say, okay, well, there's 9,000 people that we know that are interested in those things and have those traits. And then it'll give you a price based on a sort of bidding system of what it thinks you should be paying per advert. And it gives you an option for pay per click and pay per impression. And I try pay per impression for Facebook. Pay per click works much better for Google if you're doing online advertising for anything.
Why is that?
Pay per click works better on Google, in my opinion, because that's if somebody's deliberately searched for a search term, so they're already in the market in their head for this thing. So if they've bothered to look for the thing it is that you do, and then visit your website as a result of that, they're going to be very warm when they actually get there, if your website's all set up for it. Whereas Facebook adverts appear down the side of your Facebook use just fairly randomly based on how you use Facebook and what Facebook knows about you. So you're not necessarily sort of sitting there thinking, yeah, I wish I really need an accountant. Oh good, there's an accountant's advert. So it's, if it's just pay per impressions, which is paying for appearances, you're going to be putting it in front of a lot more people and getting a lot more response based on that, because if you've paid for, let's say, 10,000 impressions, you could end up with 10,000 clicks out of that because you've hit the right people at the right time. Whereas pay per click, you'd have to spend a lot more to get 10,000 clicks because you'd have to be hitting people at exactly the right time when they're thinking, yeah, I wish I had that service that I don't know where I can get it from in my local area. So that's a quick summary of both.
Let's say in your business you just wanted brand awareness, so you didn't particularly want to sell here and there, you just wanted people to be a bit more aware, and so it didn't matter if they clicked. If you chose on Facebook the pay-per-click method and you got no clicks, would you get more brand awareness, more impressions? Would Facebook flash it up more?
Difficult to say, really. If you were doing that style campaign, as you're running Facebook adverts, you get this really great suite of live statistics about how it's working. So I'd run both types at once and just put sort of 10 quid on each one and just see which one works better, and then just keep doing the one that works well. And same for any type, you can have multiple adverts in the same campaign and change them as you go. So if you're either type, sort of have 5 different ads in the same budget and monitor them all, and then if one of them is doing really well and the other's doing really badly, change them all to mirror the one that's doing really well. And you can do that different times of the day, several times a day if you want to, depending on how much attention you want to pay while you're doing it.
Okay, can we give Daniel a big round of applause? Okay, Daniel can hang around for another half an hour or so if you've got some more really specific questions, but they're getting very specific, and I think we're kind of losing some people. So I just want to invite Barrett up for a minute to talk about The Apprentice, which is what Royal Entrepreneurs are focusing on for the next week or so.